Hey everyone, welcome to another video by Simplilearn. In this video, we will look at TypeScript interview questions. If you're planning to attend an interview on TypeScript, then this video will come in handy. Before we begin with the video, make sure you have subscribed to our YouTube channel and clicked on the bell icon so you never miss an update from Simplilearn. So let's get started. We'll first look at beginner level interview questions. What is TypeScript? TypeScript is an object-oriented and strongly typed programming language, which is a superset of JavaScript. TypeScript was designed by Anders Hijelsberg at Microsoft. The limitations of JavaScript for developing large-scale applications at Microsoft and among its external customers led to the creation of TypeScript. Because of the difficulty of working with complicated JavaScript code, there was a demand for custom tooling to make developing JavaScript components easier. TypeScript code is converted to JavaScript, which can be executed anywhere JavaScript is supported, in the browser or Node.js or any other application. TypeScript is JavaScript with some additional features. To support a more robust interaction with your editor, TypeScript adds additional syntax to JavaScript. TypeScript is a scripting language that understands JavaScript and uses type inference to provide powerful capabilities without additional code. Explain the features of TypeScript. TypeScript supports other JavaScript libraries. TypeScript is a new Microsoft language that is highly typed superset of JavaScript, with support for object-oriented programming and other current features like decorators. Because browsers and Node.js comprehend JavaScript, TypeScript compiles JavaScript. TypeScript is portable. TypeScript is cross-browser, cross-device, and cross-platform. It can run in any environment that supports JavaScript. TypeScript, unlike its competitors, does not require a dedicated virtual machine or a specific runtime environment to run. TypeScript is superset of JavaScript. It is strongly syntactical that superset of JavaScript with the addition of optional static typing. TypeScript is a large-scale application development language that transcompiles to JavaScript. Existing JavaScript programs are also valid TypeScript programs because TypeScript is a superset of JavaScript. TypeScript is static. When a client doesn't have a value for a parameter, he can pass null. Optional arguments are a feature of TypeScript. You can declare some arguments in the function optional by utilizing optional parameter features so that the client is not necessary to supply a value to optional parameters. Object-oriented language. When it comes to object-oriented programming with JavaScript, TypeScript shines. Because of the class keyword, it makes object-oriented programming look quite similar to programming in other object-oriented languages like C# or Java. What are export and import keywords in TypeScript? Import keyword is used to export declaration. Example, export star from module. And the export keyword is used to export any variable function and type aliases. Below is the example for import keyword and export keyword. Can TypeScript be used for the backend? TypeScript can be generally used for backend applications by using Node.js and having additional safety that the language brings. How to declare a variable in TypeScript? Let and const are the two methods to declare variables. Variable names can contain alphabets and numeric digits. They cannot contain spaces and special characters, except the underscore and the $sign. Variable names cannot begin with a digit. Below is the example code, where we have declared a variable with let method and we have declared a variable inside a function. List the applications of TypeScript. TypeScript can be used to develop JavaScript applications for both client-side and server-side execution. TypeScript can be deployed instead of JavaScript language since it adds more features and gives error directly with the code. TypeScript is used for building large-scale applications for enterprises. How can a base constructor be called from a child class? A base class constructor can be called from child class using the super method, as shown in the example. What are getters and setters? Getters and setters intercept access to a member of the object. They give us a way of having finer-grained control over how a member accesses each object. A getter method starts with the keyword get. and the setter method starts with the keyword set. What is the purpose of tsconfig.json file? tsconfig.json file is a JSON format file in which we can specify different options to tell the compiler how to compile a given project. This file in the directory indicates that the directory is the TypeScript's project root. List the advantages of TypeScript. TypeScript highlights errors at the compilation time during the time of development. Any browser or JavaScript engine can run TypeScript. It has a namespace concept by defining a module. TypeScript supports strongly typed or static typing. TypeScript has the advantages of being tightly typed or allowing static typing. It may confirm type correctness at the compile time because of static typing. What are REST parameters in TypeScript? When the number of parameters that a function will receive is not known or can vary, we can use REST parameters. We can pass 0 or more arguments to the REST parameters. The compiler will create an array of arguments with the REST parameter name. How to compile TypeScript with Visual Studio Code? Visual Studio Code includes TypeScript language support but does not include the TypeScript compiler. We need to install the TypeScript compiler either globally or in your workspace to transpile TypeScript source code to JavaScript. The easiest way to install TypeScript is through Node Package Manager. The Node.js package manager, if you have npm installed, you can install TypeScript globally on your computer by using this command npm install -g TypeScript. We can test the installed TypeScript by checking the version or help. For this, run the command tsc -version. List access modifiers supported by TypeScript. TypeScript supports three access modifiers: protected, private, and public. In protected, all class members can access them, but the instance cannot. But in private, it's only accessible by members, whereas in public, it is accessible by members, child classes, and instance of the class. List the disadvantages of TypeScript. The TypeScript takes a long time to compile the code. TypeScript does not support abstract classes, an extra compilation step for converting TypeScript into JavaScript. TypeScript has overly complicated typing system. How to debug a TypeScript file? To debug a TypeScript file, a .js source map file is needed to debug the file. Compile the .ts file with the source map flag for generating source map file. Use the command TypeScript tsc space -source map file.ts. Source mapping URL is equal to file.js.map. How can we convert a string to a number with TypeScript? In TypeScript, conversion from a string to a number can be done using the following commands: parse int method, and we have parse float method and number method. Explain type aliases. Type aliases give a type a new name. Type aliases are similar to interfaces in that they can be used to name primitives, unions, tuples, and any other kinds that you would have to define by hand otherwise. Aliasing doesn't truly create a new type. Instead, it gives that type a new name. Aliasing a primitive isn't very useful. However, it can be used for documentation purposes. Type aliases, like interfaces, can be in general. All we have to do is add type parameters and utilize them on the right side of alias declaration. Below is the syntax for type aliases. What are nullable types in TypeScript? Null and undefined are the two special types in TypeScript that have the values null and undefined respectively. They are not particularly useful, much like void. Null and undefined are subclasses of all other types by default. That means you can give things like number, null, and undefined values. When the strict null checks flag is set, however, null and undefined can only be assigned to unknown, any, and their respective types. The one exception being that undefined is also assignable to void. This helps to avoid a lot of frequent errors. You can use the union type string, null, undefined if you want to send in either a string, null, or undefined. What is in operator in TypeScript? The in operator serves as a type narrowing expression. The true branch narrows to types that have been an optional or required property n, and the false branch narrows to the types that have an optional or missing properties n for a n in X expression as shown in the example below, where n is a string literal or string literal type and X is a union type. Explain index types in TypeScript. Using index types, we can get the compiler to check code that utilizes the dynamic property names. A typical JavaScript pattern, for example, is to select a subset of an object properties. We may build and use this function in TypeScript using the index type query and indexed access operators. In this example, key of t, the index type query operator. For any type t, key of t is the union of known public property names of t. And t of k, the indexed access operator, is the second operator. The type syntax reflects the expression syntax in this case. T of k can be like index type queries be used in generic environment, which is where its truly potential is seen. All you have to do now is make sure that the type variable k extends to k of t. What are map types? TypeScript has a feature called map types that allow you to define new types based on the existing ones. The new type turns each property into the old type in the same way in a map type. It's important to note that this syntax refers to a type rather than a member. You can use an intersection type to add more numbers. As you can see in the example, it is the simplest map type and its parts are type keys and type flags, where syntax is similar to the index signatures. With for in the middle, there are three sections in total. The type variable k is assigned to each property one by one, and the literal union of strings. The name of properties to iterate over the stored in keys, and properties type as a result. What is meant by contextual typing? When there is a type on one side of the equation but not on the other, the TypeScript compiler finds out the form. We can omit typing on the right side as TypeScript can work it out automatically. This increases the amount of work needed to type code. Distinguish between TypeScript and JavaScript. TypeScript is an object-oriented programming language, whereas JavaScript is a scripting language. TypeScript supports static typing. JavaScript does not support static typing. In TypeScript, error can be found and corrected during a compile time. In JavaScript, errors can be found only during runtime, as it is an interpreted language. There is support for ES3, ES4, 5, and 6 in TypeScript, whereas in JavaScript, no support for compiling. In TypeScript, functions can have optional parameters, whereas in JavaScript, this is not possible. In TypeScript, converted into JavaScript code to be understandable for browsers. JavaScript can be directly used in browsers. TypeScript has proper build setup, node package manager, is required for static type definitions. No build setup is required in JavaScript. What is JSX? JSX is an XML-like syntax that can be embedded. It is intended to be turned into legitimate JavaScript, though the semantics of that transformation will vary depending on the implementation. TypeScript allows you to embed JSX, type, verify it, and compile it to JavaScript immediately. JSX needs to be translated into a valid TypeScript. We use the JSX file with the .tsx extension. Define static typing. Static typing refers to a compiler having variables, parameters, and object members that are recognizable at the compilation time. This helps in detecting early errors. Static typing is an important concept. Static typing is when the compiler enforces that the values use the same type. Here's an example. What is meant by type inference? When you don't specify an explicit type for variable, TypeScript can infer it. Type inference is the term for this. This is normally done during the declaration when the variables or parameters are initialized. TypeScript recognizes that the variable foo is a string, even if we don't mention string as a type. Here is an example. How to create objects in TypeScript. Objects are collection of keys and values that resemble a dictionary. The keys must be one of a kind. They resemble arrays and are sometimes referred to as associate arrays. An object type in TypeScript refers to any value with properties. It can be defined simply by specifying the properties and the kinds of these properties. As an example, explain different data types in TypeScript. Number, both integer and floating point numbers are represented by the data type number. Boolean has true and false values. String, it is used to denote a string of characters. Void is usually applied to function return types. Null, it's used when an object isn't worth anything. Undefined indicates the value assigned to an uninitialized variable. Any, any type of value can be assigned to a variable if declared with any data type. What are the benefits of using TypeScript? Compilation. JavaScript is an interpreted language. Thus, there is no need to compile it. As a result, it must be run to ensure authenticity. If there is an error, you write all the code only to find no output. As a result, you will have to spend hours looking for faults in the code. Error checking is provided via the TypeScript transpiler. If TypeScript detects any syntax mistakes, it will compile the code and generate compilation error. This aids in detecting errors before the execution of the script. The next benefit is it provides an optional type system for JavaScript code. When a client doesn't have a value for a parameter, he can pass null. Optional arguments are a feature of TypeScript. You can declare some optional arguments in the function by utilizing optional parameter features, so that the client does not need to supply a value to optional parameters. Strong static typing. JavaScript does not have a powerful static typing system. Through the TLS, TypeScript comes with an optional static typing and type inference system. The TLS can deduce the type of a variable defined with no type based on its value. TypeScript supports object-oriented programming. TypeScript supports classes, interfaces, inheritance, and other object-oriented programming principles. TypeScript supports type definition. Existing JavaScript libraries can use TypeScript type definitions. External JavaScript libraries are defined in TypeScript definition files. As a result, it can include these libraries in TypeScript code. How to install TypeScript? TypeScript is a JavaScript programming language for use in application. TypeScript extends JavaScript with optional types that support tools for large-scale JavaScript application in any browser or any host on any other operating system. To install TypeScript globally with Node Package Manager, which means you can run the TypeScript command from anywhere in your terminal. To install the latest stable version of TypeScript, we just need to run the command npm install-g space TypeScript. This will install the latest version of TypeScript. What are decorators? A decorator is a type of declaration that can be used to decorate a class declaration, method, accessor, property, or argument. Decorators take the form expression, where expression must evaluate to a function that will be called with information about the decorated declaration when it is called at runtime. What are mixins? Combining simpler particle classes is a popular approach of constructing classes from reusable components. For languages like Scala, you may be familiar with the concept of mixins or characteristics. To extend a base class, the design relies on generics and class inheritance. The finest mixin support in TypeScript is provided through the class expression pattern. Explain classes in TypeScript. Classes are not supported in JavaScript ES5 or earlier. This feature that TypeScript inherits from ES6. A class is a collection of items with similar characteristics. Fields, methods, constructor, blocks, nested classes, and interfaces are all included in the classes. Below is the syntax to declare a class. In terms of OOPs, a class is a template for producing objects. What is a namespace and how to declare it? The namespace is used to group functionalities logically to enable a single or a group of linked functionalities. A namespace can include interfaces, classes, functions, and variables. The namespace keyword followed by the namespace name can be used to construct a namespace. Curly brackets can be used to define all interfaces, classes, and other objects. Below is the syntax for namespace. Explain the components of TypeScript. Internally, the TypeScript language is separated into three layers. Each of these layers is further subdivided into language, compiler, and language services. Language, it is written in TypeScript and includes TypeScript language components. It includes syntax, keywords, and type annotations. Compiler. The TypeScript compiler converts TypeScript programs into JavaScript code. It also converts our TypeScript code to JavaScript code, parsing and type checking it. It provides information that allows editors and other tools to deliver greater assistance, capabilities like automated refactoring and IntelliSense. It adds a layer of abstraction to the core compiler pipeline. What are the recent advancements in TypeScript? TypeScript 4.2 has been released and it includes more flexible type annotations, tougher checks, and additional configuration choices and a few breaking changes. REST arguments can now be placed anywhere in triple type. In type error messages, type aliases are no longer enlarged, resulting in a better developer experience. TypeScript 4.2 brings the language one step closer to its aim of accurately typing JavaScript at any size, anywhere JavaScript is used. Describe as syntax in TypeScript. The as is an additional syntax in TypeScript for type assertion. It was introduced as the original syntax conflicted with JSX. While using JSX with TypeScript, only as style assertions can be used. Define Lambda function. TypeScript provides shorthand syntax for defining function expressions. A Lambda function is an anonymous function without a name. Below is an example for Lambda function. What are conditional types in TypeScript? Based on a condition given as a type relationship test, a conditional type chooses one of the two alternative types. When t can be assigned to u, the type is x, and when t can't, the type is y. Because the condition depends on one or more type variables, a conditional type t extends to u. X is to y and is either resolved to x or y or delayed. Whether to resolve to x or y or to differ when t or u contains type variables is determined by whether the type system has enough information to conclude that t is always assignable to u. What is an interface with reference to TypeScript? The interface defines the syntax for classes to follow. A class implementing an interface implements all its members. It can be referenced but not instantiated. TypeScript compiler uses an interface for type checking. What is a declare keyword in TypeScript? As JavaScript does not have TypeScript declaration, to use it in the TypeScript file without any compilation error, declare keyword is used. The keyword is used for ambient methods and declarations to define a variable that exists elsewhere. Now we will look at advanced level interview questions. What are object-oriented principles supported by TypeScript? All object-oriented principles, encapsulation, inheritance, polymorphism, and abstraction are supported by TypeScript. Encapsulation is a major component of object-oriented programming language, and its method of structuring code so that each block of code has its own set of access points for external code. Polymorphism occurs when many classes inherit from the same parent and override the same functionality. Each of those kit classes is now responsible for implementing a property or method, but they may do so it on their own unique way. Inheritance. TypeScript makes creating an object model and inheritance chain a breeze. To construct classes, simply use the standard class keyword. Abstraction is a method of modeling objects in a system that separates the responsibilities of the classes or type from the code that inherits it. Explain index signatures in TypeScript. Index signatures interact with the key of and t of k. The type of an index signature argument must be either a string or a number. If your type has a string index signature, key of t will be a string or a number, because in JavaScript we can access an object property using either string or numbers, and t of string is simply the index signature's type. The index signature consists of the index name and its type in square bracket, followed by colon and the value type. What are assert signatures? The assert signature features allows us to construct functions that operate as type guards as a side effect, instead of returning their Boolean result explicitly. After assert string, TypeScript has no way of knowing if you have guaranteed the type of input. To prevent this, most people just make the parameter input string, which is fine. But it also moves the type of checking problem somewhere, and in circumstances where you just want to fail hard, having the option is beneficial. What is type assertion? Explain its types. A type assertion is similar to a typecast in other languages, but it does not do any additional data verification or restructuring. It has no effect on runtime and is only used by the compiler. There are two types of assertions. One is the as syntax, other is the angle bracket syntax. Below is the example for as syntax and angle bracket syntax. Explain how TypeScript files can be supported from node modules. TypeScript includes a series of declaration files. However, there are two drawbacks to using these declaration files with TypeScript. One is, while upgrading TypeScript, we must deal with changes to TypeScript's built-in declaration files. And the other is, customizing these files to meet the needs and the demands of project dependencies is difficult. A new feature like @types was added that allows to override the specific built-in library. Then we can update TypeScript and the log file in dependency management, ensuring that it utilizes the same version of the DOM types. As a result, we can update the types on our own schedule. Explain the TypeScript generics. TypeScript generics is a tool for creating reusable components in TypeScript. It builds a component that can interact with various data kinds. It enables users to consume these components while also using their own kinds. The identity function now has a type variable called type. This type allows us to capture the type of data the user supplies, for example, a number or a string, so that we can use it later. We are going to utilize type as the return type once more. Below is the syntax for TypeScript generics. What is recursive type aliases? The ability to recursively reference type aliases has always been eliminated. The reason for this is because each type aliases must be capable of substituting itself for whatever it aliases. Interfaces can be recursive, but their expressiveness is limited and type aliases cannot. That involves combining the two, creating a type aliases and extracting the type's recursive portions into interfaces. It's effective. TypeScript has no trouble working with the interfaces and the other object types because they introduce a level of indirection and their whole structure does not need to be eagerly built up. Explain tail-recursion elimination on conditional types. When TypeScript identifies infinite recursion or any type expansions that take a long time and damage your editor experience. As a result, TypeScript includes heuristics to ensure that it doesn't run off the tracks while working with types that provide a lot of intermediate results. The trim left type removes spaces from the beginning of string-like type when provided a string type with a space at the beginning. Trim left returns a reminder of the string to the user. Advanced TypeScript removes tail-recursion from conditional types. It can prevent intermediary instantiations as one branch of conditional type is merely another conditional type. Explain the awaited type and promise improvements. This type is intended to represent activities such as await in async functions and the .then method on promises, notably the way they recursively unwrap promises. Existing APIs such as JavaScript, built-ins like promise.all, promise.trace, and others can benefit from the awaited type. In fact, some of promise.all's inference concerns provided as foundation for awaited. Promise.all combines certain traits with the awaited to produce far superior inference results. So with that, we have reached the end of this video. I hope you liked the video. Thanks so much for watching. Keep learning and stay tuned to Simplilearn.
Hi there, if you like this video, subscribe to the Simplilearn YouTube channel and click here to watch similar videos. To nerd up and get certified, click here.